Well, tomorrow will mark the 1 year anniversary of my father's passing. Now, if you don't know, if you haven't followed me, my father passed away from ALS about a year ago to this day. And it's been a very roller coaster journey over this past year. I'm not going to lie. My father was diagnosed, 3 years before he had actually known he had ALS. And even before that, maybe even longer. But the biggest thing being is he didn't know what it was. He didn't know, he had seen so many different specialists and no one could diagnose him until it was about a year before, going through many different studies before they actually determined that that's what it was. ALS is more commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease, essentially a disease that, stops your nerves from firing to the different muscles, so you lose control of your muscles. And so essentially you get trapped in your body and nothing happens to your mind. Your mind is still thinking perfectly clearly, but you can't do the basic necessities, right? It affects your lungs, you can't breathe, you can't talk. And my dad's voice was the first thing to go, which was extremely hard. So those last 2 years, I would see my dad, I couldn't even talk to my dad because he couldn't talk. And so it was extremely hard, right? Especially for, growing up, my dad was always this macho guy. He did everything that was macho. He would always work hard and, challenge everybody. He did all these different things. And he was also a big avid hunter, right? And so I grew up with that kind of father. And then to see him dwindle down to, what he was at the end was extremely hard. And even though I knew that time was going to come eventually, it was still hard to digest. When my father actually did pass, I went a couple months just not wanting to believe that's what happened, right? I still always felt like I could call my father. I still always felt like I could go up and visit him at any time. And so it was a very hard adjustment those first couple months. And even, to this day, I go through periods where I'll think about my father and it'll be extremely hard. And other days I'll be perfectly fine and I can go about my day without having to worry about anything. But then, something will remind you you're my father, and then it could be extremely hard, right? You go through waves. It comes in waves, essentially. And so for me, right, I have never really lost anybody close. Yeah, I've lost some people that are close, but not as close as my father, right? Now, my father, raised us up through majority of our life, right? And so I was extremely close to my father. I did a lot with my father. I wanted to do a lot with my father. And this past year has really shown me, that yes, you need to actually have time and, remember those loved ones that you have lost, but realize, I've always felt like my father was in a better place, right? He was suffering really bad, especially towards the end. And it was hard to watch. I'm not going to lie. It was extremely hard to watch. And for myself, I didn't want my dad to see that, right? I wanted my dad to still try to live the best he could given the circumstances, and I didn't want to be that person that, was a burden on my father. It made my father feel bad, right? And so it was, again, just trying to make my father smile, right? Especially in those last couple moments, in that last year, because he was getting extremely tired and he couldn't hardly do anything, right? He couldn't hardly hold a conversation. He would get very winded, he'd get very tired. Right, so you would get a couple hours in the morning to essentially, get his most energetic self, and then he would essentially be done for the day. He'd be tired, and so you wouldn't want to ask him questions because it would take too much energy for him to move and try to type everything out. And so, we're just being there with him and spending the time with him and just trying to take in what was eventually going to happen. And even though we had time, again, these past couple months I've been in denial and have been trying to fight it. And as of recently, I've started focusing more on just trying to, cope with that. and bring that to the forefront and understand, hey, this has happened, this is reality, things are changed forever. I have to adjust to this change. Now, not by any means am I saying that you need to force yourself to get over something, especially when it's the death of a loved one, but it's going to take time to adjust, right? I just wanted to expose myself to the fact that yes, my father's gone, things will be changed. And again, for a long time, I was in denial. For a long time, I didn't want to face it. I was angry for a while. You go through these different stages where you're angry and you're in denial, and those were two of the biggest stages I reflect on, right? Is being angry with the fact that my father was taken early. I felt like he was taken early, and for a long time, I still thought I had a long time with my father, and again, that ended over a duration, but the biggest thing just being is that I wanted more time. All of us want more time with our parents. We want everybody to live a long life. And my father was just always that kind of person that always wanted the best for his kids and always wanted to do the best for them in whatever way he could, right? If it was just this learning about the small details of your life to hopefully give you some advice that would improve your life in some way, shape, or form. That's the kind of person he was. And not just for his kids, right? He did that for a lot of people. He was always very helpful. And you would always, I remember always just going, when we'd go to visit him, everybody would know who my father was and how much he did and how much advice he would try to give people and help people out. And that was always good to see. People were always happy to see my father because he was that kind of person that would help people out as much as he could. And so it's just that and coping with that over the past couple months, again, it's been a roller coaster. And again, I've been fighting blinders a good majority of the time. So just trying to face that and come to that realization and allow myself to grieve properly as opposed to trying to run from it and not addressing that and realizing this is the new world I'm going to be living in, right? And understand that. And especially for a lot of people, right? Because I don't know how many people out there, ALS is a rare disease, and a lot of people are, trying to, come to this understanding. It could be ALS, it could be any other disease, right? It's trying to, understand what is going on, especially if it's a disease that is slowly taking the loved one, right? And I mean, not to say that it's any better or worse than, if something, instantly happened and that person was taken from you. But going over the long duration can be extremely hard because you get to watch the person that you did know dwindle down into someone that is unrecognizable, right? And so that in itself is hard to watch, and it doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't make anything any easier, right? It's just trying to, you don't want anybody you love to get hurt in any way, and to see that it's hard. But being a year out, things have gotten better, and I'm coming to terms. Obviously, this is something I will always come back to, and I don't think you're ever just going to get over the death of a loved one. Obviously, I think there'll be many more moments where I'll think of my father and just come to that realization again that he's gone. And again, I think a lot of people, you try to push yourself too much, and a lot of times you just need to face that noise. And I think that's extremely important, and make sure that whatever time you do have, that you are getting the most out of it, right? Try to spend as much time as possible with that person and really let them know how you feel, right? Really share those memories with each other. Really, do as much as you can. And if you have questions, ask the questions, right? Because you never really know if you'll be able to see that person again, right? And that's really changed my perspective. My perspective has really shifted over this past year on everything in my life because of my father's passing. And it really got me to rethink about my life and where it's headed, where it's going, what I plan on doing. and to be a little bit more precise in some areas of my life, and to understand that, you know, I won't have my father to get advice from, right? And essentially, you know, try to fill his shoes, or fill my own shoes, but with, you know, his words of wisdom. So again, just remember to share the time that you have those loved ones, you know, is not guaranteed. If you see them right then and there, make all those interactions really count, right? Because you don't ever know. It doesn't matter what age they are. You don't know if that's going to be the last time you see them. And so if there's something you need to say, I think it's important to say it. If there's something that you feel that needs to be said, you should most definitely say it, and understand that it's not always easy, because you may never get another moment in time to do that. And I was lucky enough to say my goodbye. Although my father had essentially gone at that point, I still had time to say goodbye, and understand that it's not always easy, but you can get through it, and you have to do whatever it takes to help pull you through that, because it can get very dark, and that's something to also understand. It can get very dark, and to have something to focus on when you're going through this grieving level, and use that energy, right, that energy that's getting built up inside you, and use it for something positive that can help pull you through this, because that will help a lot. It'll help pull you through this hard time, and realize that, you know, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. It won't be the same, but you will be okay. And so I hope this helps you guys, and I hope, you know, this will help, you know, try to pull you guys through whatever situation you're going through.